Charlie?
I'll call this meeting to order, the regularly scheduled meeting of the Transportation and Public Works Committee. I'm Councilmember Reich, chairing the committee. I'm joined by Councilmembers Yang, Councilmembers Palmisano, Councilmembers Bender. We are a quorum and can conduct the committee's business. We had on the original agenda 13 items, and I wish to add another item. We'll title it Consent Item 11.5 per the clerk's advice. And basically that item is regarding the St. Anthony Parkway Bridge over Burlington Northern Santa Fe Northtown Yard project. And it's simply to add some legal language that had not been included in the previous resolution that we had passed in committee and full council. So if there's no problems with that, I'll add that. Seeing none, that will be added to the agenda. And so with that addition, I will go through the items. We do have some public hearings, but I'll go through the consent items as amended. Anyone can pull anything for questions if they wish. Item 3 is the Edgewater Area and Cedar Avenue South Street Resurfacing Project. That's approved resolution designating the location of the improvements proposed. Received the cost estimate of $1,126,658. List the benefited properties. Direct the city engineer to prepare proposed special assessments against those properties and set that hearing for June 17, 2014. Item 4 is the 2014 Graffiti Prevention Micro Grant Program. Item 5 is special assessments appeal settlement and authorize execution of the settlement of the special assessment appeal asserted by Jeffrey Strand and Kim Jepson and authorize a reduction of $484.95 against those properties located at 5100 Thomas Avenue North. Amend the resolution to reduce the total special assessments for that area. Amend the resolution to reduce bond sale requests for the resurfacing project, and this will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Item 6 is the RFP for processing service yard waste, street sweeping, and organic material. Authorize the issuance of an RFP for the processing services for the yard, waste, street sweepings, and organic material. Item 7 is the Southwest Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Projects. Authorize amendment to the master funding agreement with the Metropolitan Council, the Southwest Minneapolis Interceptor Rehabilitation Projects to include subordinate funding agreements for additional phases of the project. This will be referred to Ways and Means. Item 8 is the 4th Street Ramp, 35W on-ramp, and auxiliary lane project. Authorize execution of amendment number 1 to the cooperative agreement with Hennepin County to increase the city's share in the project by $860,000 for a revised total share of $2,960,000. Increase the appropriation of the project by said amount. Direct Public Works and Finance staff to identify through the normal 2014 project closeout process a revenue source for the project to restore advance from the Permanent Improvement Fund. And approve resolution declaring the city's intent to pay the expenditures with tax-exempt bond proceeds. This will be referred to Ways and Means Committee. Item 9 is we'll set a public hearing to be held on June 17, 2014 to receive public comments regarding the stormwater management program as required by the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System and State Disposal System Permit. Item 10 is a sidewalk reconstruction special assessment cancellation. Approve a resolution canceling the sidewalk repair located at 4845 4th Street due to full repayment of the special assessment, and authorize refund of the principal interest collected to the amount of $185.74. This will be referred to Ways and Means. Item 11 is a series of low bids. Set low bid to Thomas and Sons Construction in the amount of $567,365.50 to complete the construction of the Penn Avenue Phase 2 Street Reconstruction Project. Accept low bid of Kenstone Products Incorporated for an estimated annual expenditure of $1,588,000 to furnish and deliver ready-mix concrete through March 31st, 2015. And accept a single bid of Caris Corporation for an estimated annual expenditure of $375,000 to furnish and deliver potassium permanganate to the Water Treatment and Distribution Division. This will be referred to Ways and Means. We will now go into the public hearings, but before that, anyone wish to pull the consent items for discussion? See none, all in approval of the consent items as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Dissenting, nay. And we now have two public hearings. The first public hearing is regards the 54th and Lindale Special Service District. Mr. Cockey.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Mike Kennedy, our Director of Transportation Maintenance for Repair, will make this presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mike Kennedy, Director of Transportation Maintenance and Repair for Minneapolis Public Works. We're here before you this morning for two public hearings for two new special service districts in the city of Minneapolis. Just as a little bit of review, I'd like to kind of go over what special service districts we have in the city at this time. Looking at the map, we've got we'll be proposing up to 16 special service districts now in the city of Minneapolis starting in 2015. One of the most widely known, of course, is the downtown DID. And going then all the way back to the beginning of history, we have the Uptown or Lake Street, Hennepin and Lake Special Service District. That was one of our first established back in late 1980s, 1990. We've got several of them along Lake Street. We have Nicollet Avenue or East Street Special Service District. Up here, Central Avenue North on the northeast in the First Ward. Dinkytown, Stadium Village over near the U. We have two inactive districts, one on Franklin Avenue and one over here on Riverview. They are on the books. They've been established as ordinances, but the communities in those business communities there have elected not to be active at this time. We have Linden Hills down in southwest Minneapolis, in Chicago, 40th and Chicago, and the one we are going to be on Hennepin Avenue here. And then today we're going to be proposing, of the two we're going to be proposing, the first one is down here at 54th and Lindale. In 2006, the four neighborhood organizations surrounding Lindale Avenue south of Minnehaha Creek gathered together businesses and residents to develop a master plan for the corridor. Among the recommendations in the plan for Lindale Avenue was the idea of unifying the look and feel of the business district, in part through the use of street furniture and other improvements. A related idea was to create a special service district to maintain those improvements in accordance with the city's sidewalk streetscape maintenance policy that was established in 1988, which requires that the responsibility for the maintenance of any streetscape improvements be resolved prior to those projects. As part of the recent reconstruction of Lindale Avenue, a steering committee of local businesses and property owners began to working with the representatives of the city council member offices, staff from the Department of Public Works, as well as representatives of area neighborhood organizations to explore various options for the streetscape improvements envisioned in the corridor master plan. With a focus on keeping ongoing maintenance costs to a minimum, the steering committee has proposed a limited set of streetscape improvements for the Lindale Avenue between Minnehaha Creek and West 56th Street, along with an initial work plan and budget focused on the core maintenance needs of the proposed streetscape improvements. The proposed operating plan and budget will be brought forward to the city for city council review and approval in the fall as part of the annual budget approval process for special service districts. An ordinance to establish the 54th and Lindale Special Service District was introduced at City Council on April 11th for its first reading and referred to the Transportation and Public Works Committee. Notices of the public hearing were published in the official newspaper of the city on April 11th and April 25th, and a notice of public hearing was also mailed on April 18th to all property owners proposed to be subject to the district service charges. Pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 428A, there'll be additional procedures that we'll be following through with in the future. The district generally extends approximately 1 block to the west and 1 block to the east of Lindale Avenue South between West. Thanks, Andy. Between I lost my place. Lindale Avenue between West Minnehaha Parkway and West 56th Street. The proposed district map and detailed boundary description are included as an attachment and on the overhead. The steering committee recommended that the district be operated as a city-managed service district, which is similar to all the rest of the districts that we have so far, with the exception of the DID. In the city-managed district, the city-managed staff city staff manage all aspects of the procurement process using the city's standard procedures for retaining services. In addition, the city retains direct responsibility for the oversight and implementation of services in the district. To guide city-managed service districts, the city appoints an advisory board, typically with 5 to 9 members composed of representatives of the property owners being assessed within the district using the city's standard open appointment process. A separate request for council action will be brought forward at a future date to appoint the initial 5-member advisory board for the district. MCO, the proposed Minnesota Chapter 432 outlines the general categories of services that may be performed within the district. Each fall, the City Council will review and adopt the district's proposed operating plan for the following calendar year, which will describe with particularity the proposed services and estimated service costs. The City Attorney's Office has certified that a petition of property owners complying with the requirements of Minnesota State Statute 428A has been met. Essentially, it's roughly 25% of the property owners need to have signed a petition that they are on board with this in order for us to move forward, and that has happened. So our recommendation today is that the city amend Title 17, Chapter 432 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances relating to streets and sidewalks to establish the 54th and Lindale Special Service District. That concludes my presentation. There are other staff here that can help answer questions that you might have. Otherwise, that's my presentation for the moment.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff per this presentation? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. This is a public hearing regarding the 54th and Lindale Special Service District, as described by staff. We do have someone who signed in. You can identify yourself by the clerk or raise your hand after the first presenter, and that would be Dan Campo. Please approach, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Council. My name is Dan Campo. I am with South Lindale Liquors. I want to keep this brief. The Special Service District, we like it. We think the neighbors will enjoy and benefit from it, and we support it. So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wish to speak? No one has signed in. Anyone wish to speak? With that, I will close the public hearing and recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Campo, for coming out to speak on behalf of it today. I just wanted to extend my extra appreciation. This one has been a long time in coming. I appreciate the staff for pulling together the business community. I appreciate the business community and their enthusiasm for this. I also wanted to appreciate the neighborhoods who are giving quite approximately $50,000 toward capital improvements in this district. It'll be used for benches and recycling and garbage facilities and bike rack loops, and I think it'll just create some nice placemaking in that area. So thank you to Kenny, Tangletown, Wyndham, and Lyndhurst. And also I'm especially appreciative of my partner across that boundary, John Quincy, and his staff, John Dibvig, for all of their chasing around and redrawing this a few times to make it work just right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further commentary, questions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the 54th and Lindale Special Service District as stated by staff in their presentation, say aye.
Aye.
Dissenting nay. That carries. We'll move on to our second public hearing. In this regards, the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District. And I believe we'll be joined by Mr. Kennedy again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the public hearing for the second Special Service District that we are proposing for today. Back to the original overall map. This particular service district is exciting and unique in a couple of different ways. This is proposed to be the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District up on Minneapolis north side. It's the first one, if you can see on the map, that we're finally starting to fill into the north side, so that's very exciting for us to be able to see that sort of community investment, business community investment in that area in the city. And the second reason this one is a little bit unique is that this will be proposed to be a self-managed special service district, which is unique outside of the DID. And I'll talk about that as we go here. In 2012, the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, or the WBC, Board of Directors convened a steering committee of local property and business owners to organize and promote the formation of a special service district. Since that time, the steering committee has engaged business and property owners, community stakeholders, city council representatives, and city staff to identify the most desired services, develop a proposed business plan describing how the district will be managed, develop a proposed operating plan describing the services that within the district will provide during this first year, develop a proposed service charge assessment methodology, and organize and submit statutory required petition of property owners. An ordinance to establish the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District was introduced at the City Council on April 11th for its first reading and referred to the Transportation Public Works Committee. Notices of the public hearing were published in the official newsletter of the city on April 8th and April 25th. A notice of public hearing was also mailed on April 18th to all property owners proposed to be subject to the district service charges. Pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 428A, there will be further procedures that we will be following as well. The district generally extends, change the map here. The district generally extends 1 block to the north and 1 block to the south of West Broadway between Sheridan Avenue North and the West River Road. The proposed district map and detailed boundary are included and shown on the overhead here. The steering committee has recommended that the district be operated as a self-managed special service district with the district management entity as allowed for under the self-managed special service district policy adopted by the City Council in March of 2013. In a self-managed district, the city establishes a public-private partnership between the city and a district management entity via a contractual services agreement. In general, the roles and responsibilities of each partner are as follows. For the city shall enter into a sole source contract. We shall use its assessing authority under Minnesota State Statute 428A. We shall review and approve annual operating plan and budget, and approve a business plan for the district. Shall monitor the overall performance of the district's annual operating plans, shall review the district management entity's financial statements, and shall allocate city staff to coordinate the district services with ongoing city services. The district management entity, for their part, shall provide all direct day-to-day management and operation of the district, shall be responsible for all administrative management of service contracts, including specification, procurement, contract management, vendor oversight, and payment, shall be governed by a management board composed of property owners and business owners within the district, shall work with the property owners and business owners to develop an annual operating plan and budget, shall develop a business plan describing how the district will be managed, and shall be responsible for the communicating and coordinating service delivery with property owners and business owners within the districts. Once authorized, staff will negotiate and execute a services agreement with the WBC in accordance with the provisions of MCO Chapter 434 and the city's self-managed service district policy. In serving as a district management entity, the WBC Board of Directors shall have a minimum of 5 members. A minimum of 3/5 of the Board of Directors shall own property or represent property owners that are required to pay into the district. The remaining board members' positions may include representatives of district stakeholders, including but not limited to nonprofit, residential, and institutional property owners. Multiple board members may not represent or have an affiliation with the same property or property owners. WBC shall make best efforts to have board members which represent a cross-section of property owners, including but not limited to geographic location within the district, property type, and property size. A quorum shall be at least 50% of the board members plus 1 and shall be required for all boards. As proposed, MCO Chapter 434 outlines the general categories of services that may be performed within the district. Each fall, the City Council will review and adopt the district's proposed operating plan for the following calendar year, which will describe with particularity the proposed services and estimated service costs. as recommended in the city's self-managed Special Service District Policy, MCO Chapter 434, automatically sunsets at the end of the district's 5th year of services unless it is renewed following the procedure set forth in Minnesota Statute 428A to establish a new district. The City Attorney's Office has certified that a petition of property owners complying with the requirements of 428A has been met. The city retains all powers, rights, and responsibilities for the public right-of-way. Nothing in 434 delegates the city's powers, rights, or responsibilities to a district management entity. So it's our recommendation that today the city amend Title 17, Chapter 434 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinance relating to streets and sidewalks to establish the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District. Approve the business plan for the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District. Authorize the proper city officials to negotiate and execute a services agreement with the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition to serve as the district management entity for the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District. Again, that concludes my presentation for the public hearing. We have staff here who can answer questions, and I know there are people who have signed in to speak.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding this presentation? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing, and this is a public hearing for the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District. We do have people signed up, and I will read them in order. Dr. Tara Watson, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Tara Watson. I am a business and a property owner on the West Broadway corridor. The businesses that I own, one is Watson Chiropractic. The address is 2110 West Broadway Avenue, and that's in Minneapolis. Exceptional Home Health, which is another business at that same location, and then the Anytime Fitness West Broadway. I've been involved in the planning and the outreach for the West Broadway Improvement District, and I also sit on the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition Board of Directors. Property owners have been exploring the idea of a business improvement district on West Broadway formally since 2010. We were interested in an increased level of service for the corridor and would like to see the other like we see in the other business districts across the city. The West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, in partnership with the steering committee of property owners, have done significant outreach to determine if we should implement a special service district, what goals should be, and what services would be most valuable. To date, our outreach has included door-to-door, postal, and electronic communications throughout the process, panel discussions of special service district experts, a trip to Rochester where we met with their improvement district staff, one-on-ones with business owners of over 60 properties. We've done needs surveys. We've had 2 open houses. There have been ongoing discussion as part of the West Broadway Business Committee and a petition process, and we actually received petitions for 74 properties. Overall, property owners agreed we wanted a cleaner, safer, better branded, more competitive business district. We have a large, committed, and organized group of business and property owners that are investing in the West Broadway corridor, but currently the level of service on the corridor is not telling that story. We want to create a more inviting, walkable district with the level of service that isn't currently expected in North Minneapolis, but that our residents and customers deserve. The identified goals and activities include a cleaner, safer, greener, and more beautiful West Broadway, including a decrease in litter and graffiti, decreased crime and perception of crime, increased presence and maintenance of public art, seasonal decorations, banners, benches, garbage cans. We would like increased eyes on the street to deter crime and increase greenery. We intend to increase commerce within the business district by changing the negative perceptions, improving promotion of West Broadway business and cultural opportunities, and attract new businesses and development. The 2015 services will include pan and broom cleaning, holiday decorations, street pole banners, and graffiti removal. In year 1, we decided on a budget that is big enough to have an impact on the corridor, but shouldn't put an undue burden on the businesses and property owners. The majority of our property owners have signed the petition again to establish the improvement district. We have support from our larger property owners, which include Cub Foods, Kemp's, DC Group, Dean Rose, George Sherman, Phil Greenberg, Masters Development, and our smaller property owners, Dimensions and Hair, Hair Plus Wigs, Digital City, Cliff and Norm's Bar, Bankers Media Group, C&J Barbers, and those are just to name a few.
Thank you very much for that overview. I will now call Rich Rabanis. Forgive me if I pronounce the name incorrectly. State your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Council. My name is Rich Rabanis. I own Classic Auto Storage at 2011 North 2nd Street. I'm not directly affected by this, but I have some real concerns that I'd like to identify today. The doctor mentioned that 74 businesses have approved, and if there's 308 ratepayers, I think we would need 77 to have this approved to start with. I don't know if her numbers are accurate. I just heard that just now. One of the things that I brought forth in one of the meetings that we've had before was the petition itself. I was very unhappy with the way the petition was drawn up. There is no way to vote against this. And my understanding in my years, there's always been a way to vote against something. I think the petition is wrong. I brought that up to them. I have an example of that if you'd like to see that. I propose that they select or use something similar to the Lake Street Enhanced Streetscape Improvement petition, which I have here, that lists the property owner, the front footage, the assessment rate, the enhanced assessment total, and then it provides a place for the business owner to either approve or disapprove of this. The petition that the West Broadway basically has no information as to what people are going to be charged for this. It only has a place for them to sign, list their building, and approve it, I guess. I think, and I brought this up earlier at a meeting, and that's as far as it went. I also brought up, when this was first sent out to us business owners, there was 22, and I'm stepping on toes here, and I'm okay with that. There was 22 pages explaining this program, and there was 21 words explaining how it was going to be paid for. And I think that's a real disproportionate relationship, because I think the main thing that business owners need to know is how are we going to pay for these improvements, and what are we going to get from these improvements. And I researched this on the internet, and they talk about things like the neighborhoods are better able to maintain property values during economic downturns because prioritized commercial corridor services and programs are continuously provided by the bid. And then I heard somebody mention that maybe this is going to decrease crime. I'm not so certain that removing graffiti, sweeping the streets is going to reduce crime on West Broadway. I would like to, and I've requested that they look at how much crime is there right now, and then let's go back and reevaluate it in 5 years and see if we have any reduction in crime. And also see if our property values have gone up. Because they claim that these programs do that. They increase the property value, they decrease the crime, they enhance and I'm not opposed to the enhancement, but I am opposed to the claims unless they're supported. I have asked the question as to how many of the 308 ratepayers' doors are currently closed. I have not received that information, but there's a large number of businesses that are closed in this particular district, and I don't know how that affects this. Another point that I'd like to bring up, I taught school for 34 years. I taught auto mechanics, and I loved what I did. And then I bought my business, and I think we've been very successful at our business. One of the things that I wanted to encourage, and I talked to the committee here about, is to try to hire local people. Try to hire the people. When I drive down West Broadway, because I try to do business on West Broadway, try to hire companies that employ people that are standing on that street. You give them a job, give them an opportunity. Don't bring in somebody from the outside. And I hope that we do that. The other thing I would like to encourage is the use of school programs. Maybe they could use a club, North High. Maybe they could use some club to do some of this work, and use it as a fundraiser for the school. I get probably 4 or 5 calls a year from North High asking me to donate for their athletic programs. And I respectfully have declined every one of them. And I always come back and ask, what shop classes have you got there? I would be willing to support.
Sir, we want to keep the testimony to the proposal that we have before us. Those are interesting ideas and possible amendments as things move along, but I appreciate your questions that you have that are specific to the proposal.
All right. So I guess that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, and we'll make sure at the end of the testimonies we'll take them in aggregate and answer the questions from staff. And I know you had several questions about the number of businesses approved, the form and your ability to vote no, local hiring practices, etc., and they'll be addressed at the end. Moving down the list of presenters, we have Susan Friedman. Please come and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Susan Friedman, and I have Friedman's Department Store at 4th and West Broadway in North Minneapolis. And I'm in total favor of having this district move on. I'm a little lonely business on the corner, so my business is a destination business. And I think if we can make it safer for people to come on Broadway and make it more appetizing for them to come visit and put park benches or trees or something, I think it would be better, and have holiday greetings for people to come like it used to be back in the 50s and the 60s. I think Broadway is a very viable business avenue, and it leaks from coming into the suburbs over going across to Northeast Minneapolis, as well as going into the university. So we make Broadway more inviting for people to come shop and make it safer for people to have people come from outside of the area, then I think it's very important.
Thank you very much, and I think I'm overdue to visit your shop for some new sneakers.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm overdue to visit your shop for some new sneakers. Or, and if I were hip, I'd say cool kicks. Moving along, Deanna Cummings, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, council members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you all about the West Broadway Special Services District. I'm hopeful that you will vote in favor of the Special Assessments District. My name is Deanna Cummings. I'm the Executive Director of Juxtaposition Arts. We're business owners and property owners along West Broadway. We own 1100, 1102, and 1104 West Broadway, and then 2007 Emerson. 3 reasons that I am in favor of the business district. The first reason is that I believe business owners sharing in investment as well as decision making in terms of upkeep and maintenance and improvements in our neighborhood will increase social and economic capital and create a sense of improved local power. And that matters in communities like West Broadway, where we can have an overall perception of things sort of being done to us and being outside of our control. The second reason is more eyes on the street. will in fact create a greater perception of safety, and I think also a greater reality of safety along the avenue. It would also mean some greater consistency of standards in terms of upkeep, care, and maintenance, just like we see in other areas of the Twin Cities. Areas in South Minneapolis and business owners in South Minneapolis aren't inherently better or cleaner people. The business improvement districts give them the ability to keep the streets consistently clean and beautiful in a way that if we don't have that in our community, it's left up to every individual business owner. The third reason is that the West Broadway Coalition is the perfect organization to administer this program. They have the relationships and the processes in place. They already manage a number of different granting programs and other programs that impact the entire avenue. They have the trust of the local businesses and property owners, and they have long-term relationships. They consistently hire local, partner with local organizations, and really are very thoughtful in everything they do in thinking about how the work will impact the people and the place that is in our local community. So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any others sign in on the other sheet? No? Anyone else want to testify today? Please approach, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. This is a strange place to be. I'm Jackie Cherry Holmes, and I am chair of the West Broadway Business Association and a 35-year resident of North Minneapolis. What a lot of folks don't know about me is my first job out of college was working for a law firm on Broadway. That was when we had a Fannie Farmer on Broadway. We had a Ben Franklin. We had 3 banks, TCF Bank, Northwest, and U.S. Bank, all on our avenue. We had 5 or 6 viable restaurants. We were a thriving and vibrant business community. We've gone through some changes, and while we aren't going to recreate the past, I think we are going to create a very vibrant future. I am proud, really proud of the work that our staff, Erin and Shayna, have done on getting the signatures on this. We have over half of the businesses or of the property owners who have agreed that this is a good idea. We followed your form, we went through the process, we did the hard work associated with this, and now we're ready to do the hard work that goes into rebuilding our business community. We're working with Councilmember Yang, who held a wonderful forum last week about what does the future of West Broadway look like. We want to be partners in that. We have a good vision, we have great businesses, we have great opportunities in front of us, and this business district will enable us to advance the future and to really take ownership of our community, take ownership of what's going on in our neighborhood, and move to the next level. So we ask for your support, and we want to continue to be partners with all of you as we grow North Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to approach? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Louis Dotches. I own and operate Merwin Liquors at 700 West Broadway, and I apologize, I'm getting over a cold. But a few years ago, there was the East Gateway Partnership. We were one of 4 businesses involved in that, which put eyes on the street. The East Gateway Partnership unfortunately disbanded, and to sort of reiterate what Deanna already said, the eyes on the street will be a really good addition to that part of the avenue. So we're very much in favor of that and all the other benefits that this will bring. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to approach and make testimony? Anyone wish to approach? See none, I will close the public hearing, invite staff to address questions that were raised in testimony, and then after those questions are satisfied or at least answered, we'll open it up for questions from the committee. So I close the public hearing and invite staff to address issues raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard several questions. One was that the petition process doesn't allow you to vote against establishing the ordinance. It kind of does in 2 ways. By not signing a petition, you are voting against it. Actually, and afterwards, once the council passes this resolution, there's a 45-day veto period where the property owners will be assessed or will be noticed again, and they'll have an opportunity to express their objections. All we need is 25% essentially of the petitions to start the process that we have here to start the ordinance process. If there is more than 35% of the people that object during the 45-day period, then that would cancel out this action. That will happen again as we go into the budget process in the fall. We come forward to set the budget for 2015. The petition process that we have done, I believe that the gentleman was referring, well, the petition process that we did for that they used to petition for the service district here was the petition that we prepared. And generally speaking, it is a petition that they sign on to say that they're in support of the ordinance, and they will be in support of, when we renotice and have the public hearing in the fall, they'll be in support of the budget at that time, and there will be a notice at the time of the budget hearing with all the appropriate assessment amounts and the service charges that will be levied. And that process has the objections as well. I believe that the petition that he was referring to from Lake Street was something produced by Hennepin County. That wasn't one of our petition processes. And just to be clear, the gentleman did mention it, but he is not being assessed. He's not part of the service charges in this district. He is part of the community, and his property is within the service district itself boundaries, but his particular property is not being assessed or would be subject to service charges at this time. Were there other questions?
No, I think that covered the key ones. Are there any questions from committee? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. West Broadway Avenue has experienced some challenges, and you know what Ms. Cherry Holmes talked about with regards to the West Broadway of old, where it was thriving and all these wonderful things happened there. You know, I just don't have that experience because, you know, I moved into North Minneapolis, where I live, a little bit later in, I think, the early 2000s, and I've never had the chance to see that. And, you know, I feel like this area has been embattled for so long in terms of wanting to maybe not return to the past, but wanting, you know, to have greater days. And, you know, I think this is a great start to it with regards to, you know, a special services district. And, you know, I had a nice conversation with Steve Kramer yesterday about maybe possibly, you know, them providing some sort of technical assistance if we ever need it for the West Broadway Improvement District to just, you know, I guess, help us with making this better, obviously, because we really need it. And I'm a big fan of it. I support it wholeheartedly. I think that this is, you know, one of the many steps that we need to take on West Broadway to make this, you know, a thriving part of North Minneapolis. And, you know, when I say that, I mean this, that, you know, all across North Minneapolis, we want this revitalization to happen. And, you know, I think we've been talking about it too much, and all of a sudden, you know, this is something that is fantastic. I mean, Aaron Heelan and the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, that's a long name, but I used to remember as the West Broadway Area Coalition. They've done fantastic work in terms of reaching out to all these businesses and talking to them and having conversations with them to really get a sense of, you know, what they want, how to improve it, and those sorts of things. And I think the work should be commended. And I will share, you know, one personal experience. So on the campaign trail, there was this one day where we served hot chocolate on Emerson and West Broadway, and I can tell you that it's tough to take the wife and the kids onto West Broadway because the sidewalks aren't really that clean, and sometimes some of the elements there aren't really that nice. And so I'd be worried about safety and a number of different things. And I think, I mean, this is supposed to take care of some of those issues, and I really believe that it can. And I believe that the organization is certainly a good organization to help manage this process and to make it much better. I think I've met many of the board members on the coalition, and, you know, a lot of them are just business owners there who have a vested interest in doing very well for North Minneapolis, but specifically for West Broadway. And so I wanted to say all that to say I hope that you all will support this. This is a great improvement to what we already have, and I think all the services that will come out of it will be good for North Minneapolis.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I just want to say I intend to support this, but congratulations to the property owners who did a large amount of work. I know how much work goes into creating the petition process and gaining the alignment of so many business owners for a special service district. There are areas in South Minneapolis where I wish we had that alignment of interest in even smaller areas. This is a very large area for a special service district. And so this is really a tremendous accomplishment, and I think really speaks to the coordination of vision and cooperative efforts of so many property owners. So congratulations on this work, and I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo what has been said, but also just say that I think there's a lot of support from the city side as well to invest in West Broadway, and we've heard loud and clear that this is a high priority for Councilmember Yang. I wasn't able to go to the forum. I was disappointed to miss it, but I know that he's working hard to bring together folks on the city side as well. So this is something that the community is doing. You're showing the leadership to bring together the business community, but we're here to be full partners however we can as well to bring transit investment to West Broadway, to look at the zoning and make sure that it's in place to support development that the community wants to see. So I'm really excited to see this go forward, and wanted to make sure you know that this council is willing to be your full partner in this.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Yang? No problem. I do have one question for staff, and it's sort of a legislative question. I know we had approached the legislature with the notion of getting more flexibility with our city managed. And I, of course, represent an area that has a central area, and they're very keen on those modifications. Is there an update to that effect? And I've also heard tell of maybe some legislation that speaks to non-commercial entities engaging in these type of collective actions.
Mr. Chair, we'd be happy to answer those questions. I'm going to defer to Michael McLaughlin, who's our consultant on special service districts. He's been tracking this very, very closely and can probably give the technical details better than I can. So,
thank you.
Good morning, council members. Your first question was about the potential amendments for existing city-managed service districts. There was an attempt. We drafted some amendment language. Unfortunately, it sort of got to the Capitol a little too late to make it in sort of the committee deadline process, as I understand it. So we're all ready for next year. How's that for a way to frame it? Because there was sort of vetting the language. I think everybody was very supportive of it internally. And just for the rest of the council members, essentially what the language did in the special law that created most of the existing city districts, we refer to them as our legacy districts. There is a prescriptive list of what a service district can provide. That's in the special law. In 428A, which is the authority that the city has that's creating these two districts this morning, that statute simply says the city can decide what those eligible services are. So the amendment that was proposed internally was basically to take the language in 428A, amend the special law so it would be a mirror of that for those existing legacy districts. The next step would be to then come back to council and amend all of the ordinances that are all based on that special law that would then allow those service districts through their next budgeting process and work plan setting process to have much, much more flexibility on what they wanted to do. So again, didn't quite make it for this section or this session, but we definitely are all set for next session. The second question was about proposed amendments to 428A. There's a group, Metro Cities, which you're probably all familiar with. It's an association of metropolitan cities, is implied by the name. They are working with several cities that had proposed amending 428A to allow mixed-use properties to be essentially fully accessible by city decision. I want to make that clear. It's permissive to the city and not a requirement to a city that has a 428A district, that a mixed-use parcel, so imagine, an apartment building with, ground floor retail, that right now, for example, on West Broadway, there are probably a dozen parcels that we have to adjust what they pay because they're only partially commercial and partially something else. What the amendment would do would be to say, well, that property is now fully accessible for SSD purposes if the city so chose to. My understanding is it was in a Senate tax conference or Senate and House tax conference committee as of last Friday. I'm not sure if it made it out or if it's in the proposed Senate bill at this point. So that was one piece of it. It would allow mixed use, and then there were some sort of technical metrics when we look at the petition process. Existing law looks at two metrics, the percentage of property owners representing a certain percentage of the budget and land area. One of the other pieces of the amendment, it would eliminate the land area piece, and in exchange, it would look at the value of the property. So there were a couple of nuanced technical pieces in there as well. There also was not to get too far in the weeds, there was a transition period that property owners that were in 428A that might become liable for increased assessments because their mixed use had a certain period of time, a couple of months this year, if it passes, to basically work with the city and have a conversation. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? Thank you for that update. With that, I will move to approve the West Broadway Improvement Special Service District and the actions described by staff in the presentation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries, and we can move forward with two new districts. Good work. We can now move to the discussion area of the agenda, and the first one will be item 12, a presentation regarding an update on our protected bikeways.
Mr. Chair, Anna Flintoff, who is our transportation planner, will give you this update.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, council members, Anna Flintoff, Transportation Planning and Engineering. And I'm here today to give you an update on a proposed update to the bicycle master plan that we are drafting regarding protected bikeways. We have what this update will be is an addendum to the existing bike plan. It will not be a complete revision of the bike plan, but it will be a small document that will contain a list and a map of priority locations for protected bikeways and the associated capital and operating and maintenance costs for those priority locations. We hope to have this complete and have a final draft before you by the end of 2014. We have been meeting monthly with the Bicycle Advisory Committee on this project, and we have been having regular discussions with Hennepin County. And one of the reasons that I'm here today to give you an update is that we have a public open house planned for May 8th at the Minneapolis Central Library. And one of the key questions we're trying to get input from the public on is, where do you think protected bikeways are needed in Minneapolis? And this is a joint meeting with Hennepin County. Hennepin County is in the process of preparing a new county bike plan. And so they were at a point in their process to do some public engagement as well. So it will be a joint meeting for both planning processes. The term protected bikeway is kind of a new term. It's not really reflected in our existing bicycle master plan. But the way that we're defining it is that it's a bicycle facility that's physically separated from motor vehicle traffic. So off-street trails are the most common type of protected bikeway in Minneapolis. But they can also be located in street corridors if they're separated from vehicle traffic through some kind of vertical separation. It could be a parking lane, it could be curbs or medians, bollards, flexible traffic posts, planters, or some kind of other vertical separation. So I've got a number of examples of protected bikeways in Minneapolis and other cities. So the Midtown Greenway is an example of a protected bikeway. The Cedar Lake Trail would be a protected bikeway. The whole parkway system is a protected bikeway. The Loring Bikeway along Hennepin and Lyndale Avenues is a protected bikeway. The end of the Dinkytown Greenway along 6th Street Southeast, there is a trail on the side of that street. That is a protected bikeway. On the Plymouth Avenue Bridge over the Mississippi River, we have a protected bike lane with flexible traffic posts that are separating the traffic lane from the bike lane. That's a protected bikeway. First Avenue North in downtown is a protected bikeway. And then there's a lot of examples in other places. We've often heard about the examples in Europe. Here's an example of a protected bikeway in Copenhagen. But they're becoming a lot more common in the United States as well. So this is Austin, Texas. Here's an example in Chicago. Another example in Chicago. Here's an example from New York City. And another example from New York. You can see they're all very different. There's a variety of different treatments. They can be one-way facilities or two-way facilities. Here's an example from Vancouver. Another example from Vancouver with planters providing that separation. So in the past, we've often talked about our off-street system and our on-street system. And this kind of starts to blur the distinction between the off-street system and the on-street system. So we've often classified our off-street system as the off-street trails like the Midtown Greenway, our bike and pedestrian bridges. But then we also have a lot of trails along the side of streets that were considered to be side paths, and we've often considered them to be part of our trail system as well. But sometimes we point to those facilities like the Loring Bikeway as a cycle track or a protected bike lane. We also have, kind of protected bike lanes like we have on First Avenue North or the Plymouth Bridge, which we would classify more as a protected bike lane. But there's a lot of different terms that can be used. There's a lot of overlap for these different types of facilities. The terms cycle tracks and raised bike lanes are also sometimes used. So everything falls under this umbrella of protected bikeways. Now, what a protected bikeway is not is a number of other types of facilities that we have in Minneapolis. Protected bikeways are not the only tool in our toolbox. We need a variety of different tools in our toolbox. We need to continue to use these other types of facilities. But I wanted to be clear about what kind of facilities we are not considering to be protected bikeways. So we've got three categories: bike lanes, shared lanes, and bike boulevards. So a bike lane is a designated space on the street for bicycles, and it is marked on the street through pavement markings. It doesn't provide any kind of vertical separation. A standard bike lane is the most common kind of bike lane that we have in Minneapolis. On the right, though, you can see a buffered bike lane, which we have a number of in Minneapolis now. A buffered bike lane provides more separation between the bike lane and the moving traffic lane, or it can also be a separation between the bike lane and the parking lane. There are also a number of other types of bike lanes in Minneapolis I don't have photos of, but we do have a couple contraflow bike lanes, advisory bike lanes, and then on a number of bridges we have marked shoulders, which are not marked as a bike lane, but they provide that same kind of physical space. Shared lanes, there's a number of different types of shared lanes. One is shared use lane markings that you can see on the left there, with the Sharrow and bike symbol on the pavement. Shared lanes are where cars and bikes are sharing the traffic lane. And then the other main type of shared lanes that we have in Minneapolis are signed bike routes. And then in downtown, we do have a couple of shared bike bus lanes on Nicollet Mall and Marquette and 2nd. Bike boulevards are a new type of treatment. We've implemented about 19 miles of bike boulevards over the last couple of years. A bike boulevard is a low-volume street that has traffic calming and gives kind of a higher priority to bikes. We have examples here from Emerson Avenue North and 26th Avenue Northeast and 5th Street Northeast. Our bikeway network has grown significantly over recent years. This is the network in 1997. We had about 82 miles of bikeway network, and the trail system was really the foundation of that bikeway network. Over time, it has been growing. We've been adding major trail facilities and bike lanes over this period, so that by 2010, we had 139 miles of bikeway. And in the past 3 years, it's grown exponentially. From 2011 to 2013, we were up to 207 miles, so about 70 additional miles over a 3-year period. We have a number of additional bike projects that are in development. Some of those are protected bikeways. There are protected bikeways that are currently in development on 26th Avenue North and 18th Avenue Northeast, portions of 36th Street West and Broadway Avenue Northeast, as well as a portion of Washington Avenue downtown and the Franklin Avenue Bridge over the Mississippi River. Over the long term, with the combination of our existing system and our 2011 Bike Master Plan and some additional modifications due to recent planning activities, we have planned a total of 402 miles. So a lot of development over time. The difference between kind of where we're at right now and what's planned over the long term is the addition of more trails, particularly along the Parkway system, but a lot of addition of more bike lanes and more shared lanes. The Bike Master Plan does not specifically address protected bikeways in more of an on-street environment. In addition, the City Council approved a climate action plan in 2013 that recommended 30 miles of on-street protected bicycle facilities by 2020. And just generally, there's growing attention to these type of facilities. They come up a lot in street design projects, and across the country, there's a lot of these projects being implemented. So why is it important that we prioritize protected bikeways? Well, if we want more people to be biking in Minneapolis, we need to provide more facilities that are comfortable to more people. And biking on a busy street can be stressful or uncomfortable for a lot of people, even if there's a bike lane. And there are some areas, such as downtown or other really busy areas, where there aren't trails, there aren't low traffic streets, there aren't bike boulevards, and biking on the sidewalk also is not an option. So in some areas, there really isn't an alternative to biking on a busy street. So protected bikeways can extend the experience of biking on a trail to some of these busier city destinations. So we're near the beginning of the process, and what we're trying to do right now is identify locations to evaluate the potential for protected bikeways in more detail. And there are kind of three main factors that we think are important, that we've talked with the Bicycle Advisory Committee about being important in identifying where protected bikeways are needed. One is places where there's high existing or potential future bike demand. Another is places where there's high traffic conflict. And another is where there's a lack of alternative routes, especially these lower stress routes like bike boulevards or trails or lower traffic streets. So we're going to be having a public meeting and have an online survey, and we're going to be asking the public, where do you think protected bikeways are needed? And tell us why you think that this location addresses these factors of high bike demand, high traffic conflict, and lack of alternative routes.
Ms. Luntoff, on those 4 bullet points, and then Blong Yang has a question. I have a question. Was system connectivity, particularly a system of connected, protected routes, was that considered a factor?
Yeah, I think it may not be clear here, but I think it's kind of part of that third bullet, the lack of alternative lower stress routes. We want a connected network of lower stress routes.
well, somehow if you can wordsmith
Okay.
connected system, I think would be important. Councilmember Yang, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have to say that Councilmember Glidden actually took my nameplate, so I didn't really have anything.
Pardon me. Fake me out.
Yeah, that actually is me. But I got
Glidden.
confused too. I thought maybe you did have a question. So I had a question on this bullet point number 3, the lack of alternative lower stress routes. And so I understand the kind of the logic within that. I guess kind of one of my underlying questions has been, though, as we're understanding more about our growing bicycling community and the growing number of routes is when you call them lower stress routes, and I guess I'm thinking more about street lower stress as opposed to trail lower stress, which I think the trails are heavily used. How much are these street lower stress alternative routes actually used? It's just kind of been a point of confusion for me. I mean, we're trying to get folks to use routes that are maybe off a street that we may consider more comfortable for an A-level rider, but I have been uncertain from our tracking how successful we are in encouraging people to use alternative routes when they're available, which then says how much of a factor is that in the choice of the protected bikeways.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Glidden, are you talking? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Are you talking about like bike boulevards?
Could be bike boulevards. I'm trying to think, like, okay, so I'm not sure if you're interpreting, for example, Portland and Park as high stress routes. Are those what you would call a high stress route? And you're looking for who might choose to go on a side street as opposed to choosing to go on Portland and Park when you say you're looking for alternative lower stress routes?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Glidden, I'm not sure that I fully understand your question, but I think what the intent here is really to try to identify areas, locations where there's not a good parallel route that provides that lower stress experience.
So maybe I should ask you first. Why don't you give me an example of this that's not a trail example?
Of a lower stress route?
Yep.
I think the River Lake Greenway is a good example. The River Lake Greenway is a kind of a combination of a bike boulevard, a bike lane, a shared lane. I think that's a good example of a lower stress kind of route.
Okay. And I think the River Lake Greenway is maybe a good example of my point where, and I'm a big fan of the project. It was a community initiated project. I still think we have work to do to understand how much people are utilizing that route. It's kind of an interesting point. So. And then it says, if they're not utilizing that route, how does that affect, the availability of that route? How much should that affect where we choose to put protected bikeways?
Thank you. Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this raises a really interesting point. So I thought of another example as you were talking where Bryant Avenue has a bike boulevard, and so therefore you might not think about Lyndale or Hennepin as a place where you would put a protected bikeway, but there's kind of a balance there, which is that a lot of our major streets have destinations that people are trying to access. And so I always think of protected bikeways as a place to put lower stress routes on our major streets that have a lot of destinations where people are trying to go. So as we start this process of adding our protected bikeway network, it seems likely that we'll prioritize places that don't have a bicycle boulevard nearby or a trail nearby. But over time, I think, a lot of these major corridors are places that people want to be able to bicycle. And I hope over time, over the next 30 years, we will add lower stress routes throughout our system, to Councilmember Reich's point, to create a real robust network. And I always think of Copenhagen as the reason that's such an exciting example is 30 years ago, Copenhagen didn't have the bike ridership that it does today, and it didn't have the network that it does today. It was similar to our transportation network. And so I think in 30 years, we'll be able to have a full system of low stress routes that include protected bikeways, bike boulevards, trails, all these things that you're talking about. So that's just to say I'm very excited about this project.
You're breaking the mystique of the Danish. And I think just to emphasize, when I look at the bullet point, and I concur with the comments made by my colleagues, particularly the bullet point, high bicycle demand, that's a classic indicator and motivator for prioritization. But I think there needs to be some explicit language about system comprehensiveness, to kind of put it in a systems lingo, but you could put it in a social lingo too. Equitable access to these facilities. If an area has low bicycle demand, they're always going to lose that set of points or not have that screen in their favor. And so there needs to be a counterbalancing, fully fleshed out, clearly articulated, equally important bullet point around, you can call it comprehensive system or equitable access. Thank you.
So the process that we are envisioning is that following this kind of public input period, we would confirm the locations for further evaluation and work with the Bicycle Advisory Committee to confirm that, and then get into a little bit more detailed evaluation of trying to understand if we did a protected bikeway on this corridor, what would the approximate cross-section be, and what would be some of the trade-offs, not going to the level of designing a facility, but trying to understand a little better what would be the impacts to traffic and parking, and have a more informed discussion about whether we see this as a near-term opportunity or a longer-term opportunity. And then we would draft a list of recommended protected bikeway corridors. I think I should say also that I think we are envisioning this as not necessarily being the 30-year vision, but to be a kind of a shorter-term priorities for implementation. And then we would have another round of public review and input in the fall for that recommended list, as well as the text for the Bicycle Master Plan Amendment. And then we would, following public input, we would prepare a final draft for the City Council to consider adopting. So the public open house is May 8th, 4:30 to 7:30 at the Minneapolis Central Library. Again, this is a joint meeting with Hennepin County for their bike plan, and what we really are interested in hearing from the public is where do you think protected bikeways are needed in Minneapolis. We will also have an online survey if people can't make it to the meeting to be able to provide similar input. There is some information on the website right now, and we'll be updating that website regularly. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank you. I know that there's a lot of excitement about this plan and the bicycling community, and I think everyone that I have talked to sees this as the next frontier in our bicycle network, that it's so important to create this low stress network where people can enjoy riding, whether they're with their children, whether they're getting older and don't feel as comfortable riding in traffic, or even if you are somebody who feels comfortable riding in traffic, sometimes you don't want to be in a high stress situation. So I think this is really the way that we have to go, and it's so important to work with the county. So I was really excited to hear that this open house will be held jointly with the county. Many of these roads are county roads, and they have to be our full partners, so it's great to see them at the table. I think there are many projects going forward now that might be part of the system map. So I want to make sure that, and I think this is true, that staff is still looking at the projects that we're looking at now as opportunities to implement protected bike lanes. There's a lot of interest in making sure that there's great access to downtown by bicycle. So I think as we look at Nicollet Mall redevelopment or reconstruction, making sure that if bikes aren't really center of that project, that there is an alternative route that provides a really great experience getting into downtown. And then I think my other comment would be that I think the next step beyond creating this plan is to find funding to bring this to fruition, and that having a dedicated source of funding for protected bikeways is so important to making this a reality, both in terms of capital dollars to add to projects that are already happening, or for the maintenance that we need to make sure that our system works year round. And that's not just our protected bikeway system. Right now, we don't really have any concerted effort to plow our bicycle routes in the winter. And so it's obviously an important part of our protected bikeway network, but it's really not unique to that system, but rather something that we need to do system-wide to make sure that our bikes and bike lanes and trails are usable year-round. So anyway, just want to thank you for your work, and you have my full support in this as we move forward.
Thank you for those comments. I concur with them. And I just want to say for myself, this is a really good example of staff in the department taking leadership on an area of interest in the community. You maybe even have a sort of sense of pent-up demand for this as the pendulum has swung from policy preference from the activist world to getting as much mileage out there as possible to now getting a particular type of mileage and probably inviting a whole nother range of bicyclists into the system long term. And so I think this is a really good set of progress, or an example of progress, and definitely an example of leadership from the department. I appreciate that. With that, if there's no further comments or questions, I will move to receive and file the report from the development of the protected bikeways update to the Minneapolis Bicycle Master Plan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. We have our last item for discussion, item 13, Safe Routes Program.
Mr. Chair, we have Forrest Hardy here, and Forrest will make the presentation. Forrest is part of our Traffic and Parking Services Division.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just get this loaded up here. So yes, my name's Forrest Hardy. I've been here before to present on applications to Safe Routes to School grant applications through MnDOT, and I'm here today to speak about some of these that have come to fruition and are being constructed this year. And including some of our efforts with our own budget within the Traffic and Parking Division. So if you see on the map here, this will help kind of frame the conversation. This is all of the construction efforts that we have going on in the city in 2014. And some of these include some of those federal grant projects that I talked about. Number one on the map you see in North Minneapolis, towards the top of the map, is the Lucy Laney Safe Routes Federal Project. And this is a fairly extensive project. It includes a stamped, Duratherm stamped median, which is a pedestrian crossing enhancement and a traffic calming enhancement there on Penn Avenue. We're also working with the county on this project as well, because Penn Avenue and Lowry Avenue are county roadways. It also includes a pedestrian shelter median on Lowry Avenue and an overhead flasher there on Lowry Avenue as well to help children cross that roadway. Also, residents of the Jordan and other neighborhoods in the area frequently use Cleveland Park, and that crossing will be enhanced for that use as well. Number two is a series of blue dots scattered throughout North Minneapolis. This is an older grant that came kind of before my time within traffic and parking, but we're implementing that this year. We have this project rolling again, and that is a series of crosswalk marking enhancements in North Minneapolis and some traffic calming enhancements as well. Number three is you see in green in the northeastern portion of the city. That is a priority crossing that we've applied for funding before through federal grants, but did not receive the funding. This is 34th and Johnson, and I've worked closely with Councilmember Reich on this as well. This is going to be a great project. This is one of the steepest hills with some of the poorest sight lines in Minneapolis, and the Waite Park staff and the school patrol there are just really looking for some type of improvement there, and the neighborhood is very supportive of this as well. Number 4 is crossing improvements at Green Central School. This is also a project that we have applied for federal funding in the past. And this is something that we've also found to be a priority. It's Green Central School, along with Anderson in the southeast, have the 2 highest proportions of students walking to school. They have a very high population, and it's a very dense neighborhood. So we hope to do something good at Green Central with our local dollar budget this year. Numbers 5 and 6, which are scattered throughout Minneapolis. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold too, like a lot of people are. Numbers 5 and 6 are crosswalk marking enhancements on our 2014 resurfacing projects and some of the more recent 2013-2012 resurfacing projects. And that's one thing we do within the Bike Ped office, is to try to, I guess, track down these places where investments are being made, where the surface of the street is new, and basically use those for crosswalk enhancements or bike lane enhancements along those roadways. So that's another project that's going on kind of citywide. On the sheet in orange, you see number 7. There's, I don't know if you can see this, but there's one in North Minneapolis, one in South Minneapolis near Green there. That's a non-infrastructure project that we have going on. It's an old federal grant that we kind of kept running or saved from termination, and that's to help implement a bus stop and walk program through the school district. So this will be would actually fund volunteer, or not a volunteer, but a parent leader to help run this program to help kids walk to school. So on the to go back to the Lucy Laney grant, I wanted to show you a little more detail about, this is our largest project this year. It's nearly $300,000 in federal funding, which is 100%. There's no local match to this. It's out of the older federal Safe Routes funding, which basically doesn't require local match. But so I wanted to go a little bit more detail about what that project looks like. Lucy Laney School sits on Penn Avenue, and that's basically a two-way street, and there's pretty high-speed traffic on that street, and we've done several speed studies on this and found cars aren't compliant with some of the crossing improvements that we've already made there. So one thing that this project attempts to do is to help slow down that traffic and get better compliance for students crossing Penn. As you see on this image here, this is just a rendering of what the Duratherm stamp medium might look like in front of that school. And we have installed one of these in the past years at Bancroft in South Minneapolis, and that's what that looked like after construction was complete. And we've had some good success with compliance and with traffic calming at that location. One of the projects that was on that map, basically, but was not shown on the cities, non-infrastructure. This is a citywide project that we have going on. It's a Safe Routes to School mapping project. This has been a long and involved process. We've been doing this in collaboration with the school district for the past year and a half or so, using basically determining the routes that they've designated for walking to school, and consolidating those into something, into a network that would be more useful for both a public works planning standpoint, but also for a physical paper map that kids would use in hand to walk to school. So At this scale, you probably can't tell. There's a lot going on this map, but if you were, basically it'll be released this spring, and when you have the physical map in hand, you'll see it's very, it would be very useful. It paints a clear picture of routes that connect parks, schools, and other destinations for youth. We've basically gone to a lot of the community center or community neighborhood organizations within Minneapolis and brought forth these draft set of routes in front of them and solicited comment from them, and as well as some of the crime task force in North and South Minneapolis as well. So it's been a long time coming for this Safe Routes map, this walking routes for youth map, and we hope to release it in May. So be on the lookout for that. The backside of this map will also have some educational info. That's one thing we get asked a lot, is what we're actually doing to encourage students to walk and bike, and what type of safety information are we putting out there. This map will be key for that. Included in this information is how to lock your bike using U-locks as opposed to more flexible cable locks. It shows some of the trends over time about walking and biking to school, and has tips for starting your own programs, such as a walking school bus or a bus stop and walk. So and with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question with regards to the stamped medium at Lucy Laney. I mean, that's there to slow down traffic, and would it also prevent folks from making a U-turn on Penn?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Yang. Yes, it's a stamped median. Therefore, it's recessed into the roadway. It wouldn't physically prevent anyone from doing a U-turn there and in the block adjacent to the school, though visually it creates a barrier, and so it would feel very uncomfortable for someone to cross over that. I wasn't aware that in communication with the school that U-turns there were a problem, but if that's something that you've seen, we can take that into account into the design.
Oh, not that I would admit it, but I drive that route a lot, and I make that U-turn a lot. And so I thought I'd just ask whether I would be prevented from doing so. My kid goes to that school, and so it's not a problem for me, at least. But yeah, just wanted to clarify, just in terms of the stamp medium, whether you'd be prevented from doing that or not. That's all.
Right.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you. I wondered, do you know if there's going to be a Walk to School Day event this year? And could you share that? I did that in the past, and I thought it was a fantastic opportunity, and thought maybe my colleagues would be interested in joining their local school.
Sure. Yes, Walk to School Day is normally in the fall. It's usually around October, first week of October. Bike to School Day, I believe, is coming up on May 9th, I believe it is. Yeah, there's always great turnout for both of those. I could talk a little bit about Bike to School Day. I'm not directly involved in those efforts, but in partnership with the Bike Coalition, we have Bike Week coming up, and there's going to be basically some great programs going on as far as biking to school on, I believe it's Monday of that week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then just one more question, a little more complicated. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the future of funding for safe routes to school, especially the infrastructure side. I was previously at MnDOT before running for office, and unsuccessfully tried to maintain the safe routes to school program as a centrally managed program that would be focused specifically on safe routes to school. But instead, I believe the agency ended up putting it into the transportation alternatives pot of money. So I believe the money for Minneapolis will be administered by the central office of MnDOT along with all of its transportation alternatives grant program. But I wondered if you could talk more about the details of that, and if you have any more information about federal sources for infrastructure. And then I know there's also a conversation at the legislature this year about looking for state funds for Safe Routes to School infrastructure.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, yes. I will speak to what I know. You know, obviously, I don't know what might happen in the future. I can only speak to what's the current state of affairs. Like you said, the Safe Routes funding was its own program in the past. Yeah, it's been aggregated into locally the TAP funding. And that's something that we're still pursuing for Safe Routes. Unfortunately, that makes us somewhat competitive with our own bike and ped projects. Though I think I'm not going to speak as that this is finalized yet, but we may be successful this year with our application for Safe Routes. We applied for funding for Anderson School, and it's looking very good through Met Council that we might receive that funding. So that means that Safe Routes projects are still fairly competitive, even though they are up against more broad-scoped bike and ped projects.
Thank you. That's great. I think it's important to note that that's a decision the city has made to keep pursuing our Safe Routes to School infrastructure projects within that transportation alternatives pot of funds. And so I think it's something we should just keep talking about as a city, and then making sure, you know, we have a fantastic Safe Routes to School program that's known statewide. I think each community across the state is now having to decide if they want to pursue Safe Routes to School. And I think in other places, the projects don't compete as well against regional trail systems and other things. So just elevating the visibility of Safe Routes to School is a really important investment for Minneapolis and other communities. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forrest, on your Safe Routes project implementation map, I'm a little bit confused because there are no resurfacing projects going on in my ward. So you have number 6s. For crosswalk markings, where I think they should be 5s. And I was just curious about the implementation timeline, because I know our neighborhoods are eager about this. They've been talking about it all year, and I'm just curious how that might impact the implementation timeline.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Palmisano. I'm trying to refresh my own memory about number 6. I believe it may have been a resurfacing that got bumped from last year, but I could be wrong about that. I believe that's Xerxes and Southwest Minneapolis county project. So I don't know the exact timeline. I would imagine probably mid to late summer, July or so, and we'll just try to obviously tail that project with these crosswalk markings upgrades. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
Just when it would be implemented, and you said maybe July timeframe, so not for this school year, but for next school year.
Right, it would be late summer for most of these crosswalk marking upgrade projects.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions, comments? Really appreciate the report, the progress. The projects are, you must have a really great screening process, because these certainly would come as top priorities. Just looking at the criteria you have, it's really good to see we're targeting that well. And yes, these, to Councilmember Bender's point, these are very well received, not just by the parents and the direct stakeholders, but the community as well. They look at them as not only advancing, improving their schools and advancing safety for their kids, but just straightforward generic improvements for the community, generally speaking. And so I agree with Councilmember Bender. We should highlight these and maybe perhaps make other communities desirous of them to the point where it is its own separate program again from the state, and not having to compete with other projects. So with that, I will make a motion to approve or receive and file of the update of the following presentation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. And with that, we have dispensed with our agenda. I will note up and coming public hearings of May 13th include 4th Avenue South Street resurfacing project. the Hay Northwest Franklin Hall Lynn Park area street resurfacing project, and 2 projects regarding LaSalle Avenue street resurfacing and street reconstruction. All that on May 13th will be a very busy schedule regarding public hearings. With that, good afternoon, or nope, still morning. Thanks. We are adjourned.